Thanks to the amount of affordable gear these days, it's really easy to make a great mountain bike video at home. Now, the cheapest and easiest way to do it is by getting yourself some kind of action camera. Now, the reason these are so good is you can mount them on your head, you can put them on your body or your bike, or even just on a pole and film them using them as a regular camera. But there can be a bit of a tech overload trying to figure out what you need, knowing which aspect ratio is right, knowing which sort of memory card you want, or your FPS from your H.264. This video is all about action cameras and how you can get the most out of one. First things first, and that is selecting the right style camera for you. Now, there's obviously very expensive options available and there's very cheap options out there. Some are fully featured, some have barely any features. Some are small, some are 360 cameras. Now, what is it you're going to be using your camera for? If it's just some occasional POV footage, i.e. following your mate down a trail and some crashes, stuff like that, or even a screen grab to chuck on Instagram, you're not going to need the top of the range cameras that film 4K and have all the bells and whistles. You can get away with a very modest camera. It's going to save you a lot of money and you'll still get plenty of great use and fun out of it. What frame rates or settings do you really need from your camera? Well, to be honest, up to 60 frames per second is absolutely fine. And although many cameras, even the cheaper ones, do film in 4K these days, you'll often find it will be at a lower frame rate. And really, you've got to bear in mind that you don't need to be filming in 4K. 1080p is absolutely fine. And the other option, of course, is something that films 360. This particular one is a Rilo, it has a camera on both sides. If you're going to pick a 360 camera, make sure it can still function as a regular camera, because of the fact that you don't always want to have that crazy image. As fun and as amazing it is what you can do on these things, it can get a bit sickening. So just make sure if you pick one, you can also use it just as a regular 180 camera. I'm just going to throw you over to Ben Deacon, the Deaconator, and he's got some great tips on using an action camera.
Hello guys, it's Ben Deacon here, Mr. Oi Oi Man. We are here in the Muck-Off workshop getting next year's bikes ready. So I've got Rob Webb on the case, and we're just going to show you a couple of GoPro tips. I got asked by Doddy to show you a couple of my top tips. So the first one I'd recommend is the mounting hardware that I use. So this is the first one I use, just the normal handhold pole. This is where I can film other people, getting all the angles. This is what I used at Red Bull Rampage with Brendan, etc. The next one being is your helmet mount. Now, obviously some people mount on top of the helmet. I personally choose to mount under the peak. The whole reason for this is it just means that you can get the hands in, you can see some fat whips and all that good stuff. It's also another top tip to take a battery out on the trails with you. The main reason being, if you're going to a big bike park, you don't want to miss every run, so you just want to make sure you've got a backup just in case. And I guess the final one is the frame rates and things that I use on the actual GoPro itself. So I actually use 120 frames per second if I'm going to get some slow-mo clips. And then likewise, I use the super wide settings. The whole reason of the super wide setting, it just means you can see a bigger field of view. So certainly on things like the Mega Avalanche, it means you can see the carnage either side of you. Anyway, they're my top tips. Hopefully you've enjoyed my little part of this episode. Until the next one, see you in a bit. Oi, oi.
So as Ben actually just said, he's using various different mounts on his helmet and off the bike as well. Now, he actually showed one of these poles to do the old selfie thing with, but this particular one by GoPro, I think Ben uses the same one. You can actually use it as a mini tripod as well. Quite a versatile bit of kit, so it's well worth considering something like that. Now, if you're mounting onto your helmet, a couple of things to consider are the safety aspects and also how you look. If you mount on the top of your helmet, firstly, you're going to look like a bit of a Teletubby. If you can deal with that, it's no problem. But secondly, something quite important for your footage point of view is it actually slows down the footage from that point of view. So if you're going to be doing that, make sure you're following another rider. If you want the better form of view that makes it seem like you're going a bit quicker, mounting under the peak, as Ben suggested, is really good because you've got a better perspective. You can still see your bike, you can still see your handlebars, and you have the nice stability of it being on your helmet. If you're mounting underneath there, it's kind of a good idea to do it on the peak itself, because if you have a crash and you land on the front or side of the helmet, it means the peak can break off. Next up, of course, in the mounting realms, of course, is the famous chesty mount. It's pretty much like a bra that you put on and you mount the camera on your chest, tilt it up a little bit so it faces down the trail. You can see the bike moving around. It's a really dynamic place to mount it, and arguably one of the better places because you don't have the additional weight on your helmet. However, some people are a little bit bothered by this because firstly, it can be a bit sickening if you're watching a really aggressive trail because there's so much movement of the bike. can be a bit disorientating to watch. So if you choose to use a chest mounted camera, just be cautious of how long the clips are and how aggressive your riding is, because it can be a bit overwhelming to watch. The other one, of course, is the safety point, because the camera is on your chest. Now, of course, the camera mount will most likely break off, but some people are put off by this. Something you might want to check out, Camelback, for example, make a chest plate with the mount on, so it's actually a sternum protector with the GoPro mount or the action camera mount on the front there. So good safety option if that is up your street. Now, a creator tip from our behind the scenes guys here. Obviously, we make videos every day, so Dan the cameraman and everyone else here at GMBN and GMBN Tech, they know so much about this stuff. Now, on a daily basis, they're putting GoPros and they're putting other action cams and stuff all over bikes and trying to get this footage. And the stock mounts they come with, although they work really well, they can be a pain when you take them on and off. So they quite often replace those actual mounts, basically the mounting hardware, with regular bolts and screws. That way you can use an Allen key, like a Topeak trail tool, something like that, or a screwdriver. It just makes it a more secure fit and it makes it easier to get them on and off. Now, whilst on the subject of mounts, there's lots of aftermarket mounts available, like these little fellas here from K-Edge. This one is designed to go on underneath your saddle rails, facing backwards, so you can have the camera facing out the back, capturing the wheel, rotating around and seeing the rider chasing you down the trail. If you're using any of these sort of mounts, make sure they don't sort of clash with anything on the bike, because this one fits underneath the saddle. Of course, your rear tyre could hit it under compression. So wherever you mount them, just take care and make sure they're not going to hinder any part of the bike or yourself hitting them. Now, you might hear people talking about gimbals. A few years back, they were really popular, especially on that chesty mount, because you could get the most insanely stable footage from them. But thankfully, you can get around that these days, because most of the action cameras available have very good stabilization built in. And if you've got a 360 camera, there's some really cool things they can do. Because they film a much bigger image size, you essentially crop in on the image. You can still crop in a 1080p or even a 4K image and not even need the stabilization of a physical device. Although, of course, all of that does involve on good light. That is your friend. Next up is the memory card in which you're going to record your information onto. I would recommend getting the best one you possibly can, because sometimes you can get corrupt files and it's painstaking, especially when you've recorded like the run of your life and you can't play the file. So get yourself a decent one. Now, always look for a number 10. So they're in a category of 1 to 10. 10 will be the fastest data rate, basically it records, it reads and writes to. So look for a 10. It might be so that you've got a, I don't know, like a GoPro Fusion, for example. It might require you have a high-speed card. If that's the case, you're gonna have to invest and get a really good card. And make sure you do a bit of housekeeping on your card as well. Get in the habit of formatting your cards quite regularly, because it cleans the card out properly and makes sure there's no corrupt files on there that could crash your camera, or more importantly, corrupt files that are on there. And of course, if you've got like, I don't know, 2 hours of riding on there, take it off. You don't need to keep it on there and slow your camera down and take up that space. And while we're at it, one last point to remember is you can get cards with huge capacities. Now, this one's a 64 gig card, this one from a GoPro here. I personally probably wouldn't want to go any bigger than that. You can fit an enormous amount on there, and if you're going to be filming more than that, there's still a chance you could lose that camera. I'd rather have 2 or 3 smaller cards, and when they fill up, just change them out, than have a huge one. But that said, cards are very reliable, so I wouldn't be too worried about the card itself. Okay, so it's time to talk about camera setup a bit. Now, despite the fact cameras are all different, they're all going to have some similar options available in the menus and the sub-menus on them. Now, some of them are going to be the quality you record at. It could be 720 or 1080 pixels, or it could be up to 4K, as long as you remember it's got that stuff. Now, you also want to bear in mind that frame per second is going to be one of those as well, and of course the aspect ratio. Now, an aspect ratio is something you definitely want to consider when you're placing your camera around on your body or your bike. Now, the cinematic 16:9 ratio looks amazing, but probably not the best one if you're going to mount your camera on your chest, because you're going to miss out on everything that's going on here. So something a bit more square, a bit more like 3x4, something like that is going to suit that. So just take that into account when you're setting up your camera to go and record. If you're going to be doing some presenting at all, then you might want to consider a separate microphone. You can get plug-in lavs, so if you're doing, say, a POV run and you want to talk your way through the run, oh, I'm hitting that berm, I'm going left, I'm doubling that, they're a nice option. However, if you're doing stuff along the lines of vlogs, then you might want to consider a plug-in mic, something like this compact one from Rode. It plugs in, although on some cameras you won't have that jack input, you'll need an adapter for that. And of course, it won't fit directly onto all cameras, so you may need to buy something like this cage unit that has a cold shoe on the top in order to hold that. Always keep the lens clean. If you're doing a POV run, the chances are a flick of mud or a dead fly or something is going to end up on your lens. So if you can, obviously be safe about this, try and just like clean the lens from time to time as you're riding. Now, there are various different products available. This is a goggle cleaner from Knockoff, but that works really well on the lenses of these. And another thing to consider, just like you might already on your mobile phone or your device, is a screen protector. Now I've got one on here, and if you look close, you can actually see it's cracked because I actually hit something with this recently. And I'm glad that's cracked because I can peel that off and put another one on, and the lens is still absolutely fine. If you have the option of Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on your action camera, try and keep them turned off as much as possible if it allows, because that sort of stuff does drain the battery. And also, on the subject of batteries, if you're taking a spare one with you, keep it in your pocket, keep it nice and warm. It will last longer than it will in the bottom of a bag where it's going to get cold. Batteries don't like cold conditions. Finally, and probably most importantly, light is everything. If you're going to film in a dark woods, it's going to be grainy, and you can't expect features like slow motion to work very well, or even the stabilization that's built into cameras. You need to head out on the days that look the best. Just consider all the coolest footage you've seen on action cameras is always in the best conditions on the best weather. Next up is your editing. Now, editing is something that you need to be careful with because you can overdo the process and you can actually end up with something that looks overcomplicated and a bit crap, to be honest. Now, there's lots of software options available. Most computers now will have some kind of free software available on them. Macintosh computers, for example, like this one here, will have a program called iMovie on them. It's perfectly capable of putting together a really cool little video. Now, if you're going to be filming in 4K and 120 frames a second and stuff like that, you can choke your computer up a bit. The software can't quite handle that as well, but you'll still get a good result if you've got some perseverance. Now, if you really start getting into this sort of thing, you might want to consider some more advanced software like Final Cut or Adobe Premiere. Now, Adobe Premiere is part of the Creative Cloud package. Now, this is a really cool system. It's a subscription package and you can check off a whole bunch of things for an amount of money per month. Obviously, if you're into this, you might also be into Photoshop or Lightroom or any of the other things they offer. So definitely worth considering. If you don't want to spend any money and you just want to do it on your phone, there's various bits of software that come included with the action cameras. GoPro's quite famous for having its relatively simple stuff included on there, enables you to do screen grabs and stuff. That works absolutely fine, and sometimes it's all you need. But app stores are loaded with different video editing software. Many of them are free, but bear in mind the ones that are free, normally the better features you have to pay basically to unlock them, and quite often have watermarks all over the images that you're going to be editing, so it doesn't look quite as good. If you choose to film on a 360 camera, there will also be some sort of native software that comes with the camera or they advise you to use. Now, the things with 360 cameras, obviously they're filming literally everything the whole time, and you can get a bit carried away with these, so I'd just say try not to use that effect too much, because you can trace around so you can follow a bit of trail and you get the nice stable view. That's cool, but you might be tempted to spin around, look behind you, look up, look down, do the tiny planet thing. Use that stuff sparingly. Now, if you're going to be exporting and uploading online, somewhere like Facebook perhaps, or Instagram or YouTube, now you definitely want to be doing around 1080. If you go for 4K uploads, it can take a very long time. You're going to need very fast internet, and it doesn't always give you the same result that you hope for because they do compress as you upload. However, you might still want to be filming on 4K if you're intending on playing it on your 4K TV just by plugging it in via the supplied cable, because that can look amazing. Now, something some of the better cameras have on them is a sort of a ProTune feature, which is similar in photography terms as a RAW file. Now, most of you will be familiar with a JPEG file. That is a stock file that a camera will shoot, and it will kind of grade the image slightly. A RAW file will be much bigger and it'll be quite flat, and that means you can process that separately. There'll be similar equivalents on some action cameras. Now, if you're going to be filming a lot of stuff, it's quite a good idea to set this up as a RAW style or ProTune, whatever the camera format is going to be, and that means you can grade it in the software. This is especially effective if you're using the better software like Final Cut or Premiere. However, if you're just filming for Instagram clips and stuff like that, save yourself the hassle and go for the images straight out of the camera because they look great. Mix up your shots. No one wants to see the same clip trawling on for 5 minutes. It's an action camera, you can put them anywhere. The whole point of them is you can mount them all over your bike. Stop at the side of the trail, put it under your saddle, facing forwards down the down tube, change it to your helmet, change it facing backwards, move it around. It becomes much more exciting to film, more exciting to edit, more exciting to watch. A few little tips for you. Don't speed up your riding. It never looks good. Slow-mo by all means is fine, but don't go over the top with that sort of thing. Also, don't go crazy on effects in editing. It can look a bit amateurish. Less is more. Keep those cuts and fades quite simple. If you're quite into music, you might want to consider doing some of those cuts on the build-ups or the breakdowns in the music for good effect. It can work really well. But bear in mind, if using, I don't know, a popular music song, for example, and your video starts getting noticed, it could get taken down or the music could be removed from it, which basically just makes your video a bit boring. So you might want to consider some royalty-free music or some sort of subscription package. There's a lot of different options available and it does save you the hassle, and it's kind of fun as well, filtering through, trying to find something that really suits what you're making. And I'm going to throw you over to our very own Blake Sampson, king of the POV.
Hey, thanks Dottie. Yes, I love action cameras and working with them are super cool, but it does come with a few things. Now here's my camera bag, and there's a few things that I've taken into consideration over the years of using an action camera. And the first thing comes to mind is audio. Now I'm going to show you a bit of audio, things that I've got set up. You can just run this foam thing. Now this foam thing is basically a diffuser that diffuses all the wind that goes to those microphones. So the GoPro has two. So this does come up with some great audio. If you run it on your chest or you run it on your helmet, you can still hear yourself chatting going down the trail. That is peanuts. That's not expensive. Now mounts, I'm all about the mounts, and my favorite one has to be this. This is an extendable selfie pole. Now this thing, I call it the unicorn mount, and I basically duct tape it to my helmet and let the camera face back at me, and you can see my whole body and my bike moving underneath me. That looks insane. I love that angle. There's another angle I like, and that's not on my person. That is this little guy right here. Now take a look at this. People ask me, how do you get that nice pan shot in a time lapse? It's an egg timer. This is an egg timer, and this one right here is it's from GoPol, and basically it's got certain times. If you want a 30-minute 180 degree, you've got it, you just twist it to that. Or you got 45 minutes, which is 270 degrees. Or you go for a full 60 minutes and you can get 360 degree time lapse of what goes on around. You could do it right here and it'll look insane. That's a little hack. But I got miscellaneous number of mounts, sticky mounts. You got all of this. Another good thing, and I can't stress it enough, when you're out on the trail, I think Deacon's gonna agree with me, is batteries. You can never have enough batteries. I always have one in my pocket, one in the GoPro, fully charged, so when that thing dies, you can just flick one of these back into your GoPro and continue to grab all that good action that I love to see. Back to you, Dottie.
Cheers for that, Blake. Last up, I guess then, is when you post your videos. If you're going to post a video, for example, on Instagram, you might want to do a bit of research on the hashtags you're using and the things you're tagging. That will help your video become found and seen by more people. It's going to get more views, you're going to get more likes. If you're filming crash clips, or if you've got a good crash clip or a bike cave, anything like that, send them in to us. Tell us who you are, all that sort of stuff. The link to the uploader is underneath this video right here, and we'll feature you on the Dirt Shed Show or the GMBN Tech Show. And lastly, although it shouldn't be the last thing you do, consider the thumbnail image that goes with your video, especially if you're putting it somewhere like YouTube. And if you want a little cool tip from our creators, take a look at the thumbnails, how they appear when you scroll through the app on your phone, because the ones that stand out are the ones that you're going to want to click on. Well, there we go. There's some tips on trying to get the best from your action camera. Go and make some cool stuff and show it to us, upload it and all that stuff. Now, if you want to see some more stuff on these lines, click down here for Blake's video on how to self-shoot your own video. Now, there's some tips in there on using action cameras, but also using proper cameras as well. It's a good mixture of stuff, so it might inspire you to make an amazing mountain bike epic. Give us a thumbs up if you like this sort of content. Give us some comments. down there if you want to see some more things like this, or if you've got some suggestions, let us know. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Cheers guys.